morning. All right, today we are going to be looking at the essential question of how do we multiply and divide integers? So we want to look at this idea around positives and negatives and then multiplying them and dividing them. We've learned how to add and subtract, but now we need to look at the multiplication and the division. So let's start with a problem that looks like this. So we have this problem and it says 2 times a negative 3. So when we read this problem, it's super important for us to look at this problem and think about it as groups of. So I have 2 groups of negative 3 because multiplication, it means groups of. So I have 2 groups of negative 3. That's what this says. I have 2 groups of negative 3. It doesn't just say I have 2 times negative 3. It says I have 2 groups of negative 3. So when I work on this problem, I know that with my integer chips, just like we did in a lesson with the adding and subtracting of positives and negatives. This negative 3 represents the color of my chips, and I have 2 groups of those negative 3. So if I were to just draw this out like this, this means that I have 1 group here and 2 groups here for a grand total of 6. But it's not just 6. I have 6 red chips. So I have 2 groups of negative 3, which equals a grand total of negative 6 because those chips are red. The rule here as well is that when I have one negative sign, my answer will be negative because that's all I'm working with are the negatives. All right, let's look at this problem. Okay, if I had a problem that was the opposite of this or similar to that one, and it said negative 2 times a positive 3, oops, that is a parentheses. This is being looked at as I have to, a negative, what? This means remove. So when I have the negative sign in the front, it means remove. So this problem here says that I need to remove 2 groups of positive 3. So that negative sign right there means to remove or take away, subtract, get rid of. So I am removing 2 groups because we're still multiplying of 3. Okay, so if I am removing 2 groups of a positive 3, I need to first start with what is on the board. Well, because I have a negative here, I have nothing to remove. There's nothing on my board. Up here, I could put stuff on my board because it was a positive number. I wasn't removing anything. I was just counting what was there. Here, I have to remove. Because there's nothing to remove, I'm going to create 0 pairs. So I'm going to make 0 pairs so that I actually have something to remove. I have to create the possibility to remove something. So I'm going to create 2 groups of 3 0 pairs. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now that I've created the possibility, I can actually remove 2 groups of positive. So here is a positive. I'm going to remove that. And here is another group of positives. I'm going to remove that. So I've removed 2 groups of positive 3, and I am left with a negative 6. So when I had a negative times a positive, it gave me a negative. When I had a positive times a negative, I also got a negative. Okay, let's do one more in multiplication land, and then we will move on to something, some division. Okay, so let's look at this problem. I have negative 2 groups of negative 4. Okay, so let's really think about what this problem is telling me. This problem is saying I need to remove 2 groups of negative 4. So I need to remove 2 groups of negative 4. That's what this problem says. It tells me that subtraction sign says to remove 2 groups of negative 4. So again, I don't have any negatives to remove over here because there's nothing there. So I need to make the possibility happen. So in order to remove 2 groups of negative 4, I actually have to have 2 groups of negative 4 to remove. So I am going to create the possibility with 0 pairs, because we learned with our integer chips that when you have a red and a yellow stuck together, it's 0. It means nothing. So we can put nothing on our board all day and still have nothing. So our nothing is coming as a positive and a negative stuck together. All right, so I have 2 groups of 0 pairs. Now I need to remove all of the negatives. So I need to remove 2 groups of negative 4. Well, this side is negative and that side is negative. So if I remove this negative, boom, that's gone. And I remove these negatives, those are gone. All that's left is positives. And I have 2 groups of positive left for a grand total of positive 8. So this equals a positive 8 because 8 chips are left. You can think of this in life. If I need to remove negativity from my life, then that means that I have positivity left over. So if everything's going really yucky and I remove all of the yucky stuff and only have positives left over, my answer is going to be positive. So when you remove all the negatives, you end up with positives. Okay, so this is a quick review of multiplication of integers. I want to do a try it. So let's go ahead and do a try it right down here. Where's my green? Okay, so let's do some try its. I would like for you to solve this one, which says -7 groups of 3. So -7 times 3. And then the other try it I would like for you to do is, let's go -3 times a -4. All right, go ahead and hit pause right now so you don't hear me solving this. And then when you're all done, come on back so that way we can check our answers. Okay, so thinking about this problem, it says to remove 7 groups of 3. So I need to remove 7 groups of 3. So -7 times 3 is removing 7 groups of 3. So I don't have 7 groups of a positive 3 to remove. So I need to create this possibility so that I can do that. So I need 7 groups of positive 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so, oh, sorry, I smeared that. So I have 7 groups now I can remove. So here's a group of positive 3. Here's a group of positive 3, 2, 3, that's 4 groups, 5, 6, and 7 groups removed, which leaves me 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. And because they're all negatives, I have a negative 21. Or I can think about the rule, which my rule that I'm starting to develop here says when I have a negative times a positive, so if I have a negative times a positive, I end up with a negative. Up here, when I had a positive times a negative, I got a negative. Okay, let's check out this one right here. So this one says that I have negative 3 times negative 4, or I need to remove 3 groups of negative 4. So I need to remove 3 groups of negative 4. So I need to create the possibility because there's nothing there to remove except all my little marks from my hand. So instead I'm just going to make 3 groups, 1, 2, 3 groups of negative 4, or 3 groups of 0 pairs because that's what it's asking for. And now I can remove negative 4s. And once I remove all the negativity, all the negative stuff is gone, and I am left with only positives. So I have 4, 8, 12, or a positive 12. So I know when I have a negative times a negative times a negative, I will end up with a positive. So go ahead and write the rule out so that you have this rule with you later on in life. All right. Now let's take a look. Double check yourself here. How did you do on this? And before I turn my page, if you have any questions, make sure you come back to the Google Meet and you ask for help on this, because now we're going to jump right into division. So we're going to do some division with integers. So division of integers. Okay, so this is the opposite. So this one, when you think of division and multiplication, you know they're the opposite of each other. It's going to work the exact same way with integers. Same thing, whether it's a positive or a negative, the same rules are going to apply. So let's look at this problem here. Make sure I stay, okay. All right, I have negative 12 divided by 6. So if I have negative 12 and I need to divide this into 6 groups, thinking about this as the opposite, right? So if we were to multiply this number and the answer, we would get the number that we start with, or the number that we need to split up. So division is putting things into the group, whereas multiplication is looking at how many groups we actually had. So here we're going to be looking at what's in the group once we split it up. And so what we're starting with is we're starting with negative 12. So I have negative 12 and I need to split it into 6 equal groups. So I'm going to take negative 12 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay, so I have 12 things. Well, I need to split those 12 things into 6 groups. So I'm going to split this into, there's a group, 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 and there's a group. But what is inside the groups? That's where your answer comes from. Inside the group, I have negative 2 in each group. Or I can look at this as a negative times a positive gives me a negative. So in this case, the rule here is that I have a negative divided by a positive. I still end up with a negative. So I'm going to have that negative 2. It goes back to the same thing that we did last time. Okay. B. All right, let's look at example B. All right, so I have this problem is 6 positive, and I need to divide that into -2. What do I get? So if I have 6 and I split this into 2 groups of negative numbers, so I take my negatives and I split those up, how many groups do I have? Or how many groups will I form? So if I look at this and I see what will be inside the group, I start with 6. And I need to split this so that I have 2 groups or -2s in those groups. How many groups of -2 will I have? So I don't have any -2s on my board right now. Like I have no negatives. So I need to add or create the possibility by making 0 pairs. So I'm going to make 0 pairs. Now I have the possibility of splitting this up into groups. So I had 6 and I need to divide this problem so that I have groups of -2. So when I look at this, if I split this into groups of -2, I don't need these, and I have 1 group, 2 group, 3 groups of -2. So it's the same thing as before, it's just the opposite. It's the same rule, except I had to add on 0 pairs in order for this to work. So again, we can go back out here to our rule about a negative divided by a positive gives us a negative. Oops. And then over here, a positive divided by a negative is going to give us a negative. So let's go ahead and circle these things so that we can remember the chips that we have. These rules are going to be really important as we start working to solve problems. All right, last one. If I have -8 and I divide that by -4, how many groups am I going to make here? Okay, so if I have -8 and I divide it into groups of -4, what do I have? So I'm going to have -8 and I want groups of -4. So when I divide it into groups of -4, how many groups do I make? Well, I made 1 group here and 2 groups there. So this gives me a group 2 equal groups. 2 equal groups. And so here, when I have a negative divided by a negative, I get a positive. It's the same thing as working backwards. When I have a positive times a negative, I am going to end up with a negative. So it's just always looking at what you have left over. Some kids like to see that there's a pattern here. I always need 2 negatives and a positive. So whatever I'm using, I know what my outcome's going to be. Okay, I would like for you to do, just do a try it for me here. And your try it is going to be, oops, where's my green? All right, the try it. Try it. It says, I have a -5 and I want to divide that into one equal group. That one's really easy. Oh my gosh. Okay, hit pause so you don't hear me solving this. Oh wait, let's do one more. Try it. Sorry. Try it number 2. Try it number 2 is I have negative 10 and I divide that into groups of negative 2. What do I get? All right, go ahead and hit pause now so you don't hear me solving. So this one says I have negative 5 and I want to divide this into one group of negative 5. And so I get a negative 5. That one was cheating. Yep. All right, we've got a negative divided by a positive. So I look up here on my rules. I have a negative divided by a positive. I should get a negative, and bam, I've got a negative. Okay, down here on this one, I have negative 10. And I want to break it into groups of negative 2. So when I break this up into groups of negative 2, so here's a group of negative 2, negative 2, negative 2 in each group, I end up with 5 positive groups. 5 positive groups because I'm not taking anything away. I'm just grouping them up, and that's how I get it. All right, go back to the beginning of how did you do on these? And then go back to your essential question to answer, how do we multiply and divide integers? So go ahead and answer your essential question now. How do we multiply and divide integers? And then out to the side, I would like for you to please rate your level of understanding. 1, I am so lost. I have no clue what's happening. I'm going to go back and re-watch this video, or I'm going to come to the Google Meet and ask for help. 2, I kind of get it. I kind of don't get it, but I'm glad that we have the rules because I can just look at the rules. Or 3, I am doing amazing. I already knew how to do this, and I am ready for extra practice problems. All right, Manta Rays, make it a great day. The Manta Ray way. Also, please come back to the Google Meet so if you need help, or go and work on your practice work. Have an awesome day.